Everyone, welcome back to 2 Hours on a Sunday. I'm Brian.
And I'm Nick.
And today we're doing something a little different.
Very different.
Very different from what we normally do. We normally just, discuss movies. Our favorite movies.
Sometimes video games, sometimes really long TV shows.
Yeah. We've only done TV I think once or twice just because the amount of episodes we have to go through.
Yep.
And we stick to the 20-minute episodes, the shorter
Thank
TV
goodness
shows.
we are not watching 60-minute TV series.
Yeah. But we decided to add a little graphic novel into this season.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one I read last year, and I suggested it to you, and it was The Six Fingers in the One Hand.
Oh, so cool. And I was like, yeah, I'll read it. And you're like, no, read it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it was super cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
I read it in 2 sittings. I read The Other Hand in one day, and then I read The Six Fingers the day after, because I just really wanted to know how it ended. And I think it tapped into the detective / noir / futurism thing that I really like when it comes to graphic novels.
Right.
I think one of my favorites is Batman The Long Halloween. I think it's a great story. I love piecing things together as it goes. I love being behind the view of the detective, and I think this story does a great job.
I gave it my interpretation of how visually it looks is a mix of Blade Runner and The Batman with Robert Pattinson.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Even the whole feel of the book is very The Batman, but with more futuristic elements.
Is there a quote at the back of the book? On the back cover, it says Blade Runner mixed with Batman mixed with something else.
I have no idea, because I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
You might have known this because you read. So for those of you who don't know, graphic novels tend to be released in issues.
Mm-hmm.
So they release in miniature issues. And this book is separated into 5 issues per. So the One Hand is 5 issues, and then Six Fingers is another 5 issues. And then when it's all done, they bring it together into one graphic novel.
Yes.
It's just a bigger book. So I don't know. On the back of mine is just artwork.
That's right. So you have the individual issues.
Yes.
And I have the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which goes into how my experience was with the book. I've read it twice.
Yeah.
But the first time, it was very hard to understand so issues, for those of you who also don't know, issues are released a month at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this book, it was you have a month, say, released in April. And then 2 weeks later, you would get The Six Fingers. And then 2 weeks later, you would get The One Hand number 2. But for The One Hand number 1 and number 2, it was a month in between. But when I got my books, it was I would go back to the store, because the store was an hour away. It would be 3 months difference between the couple issues. So I'd read the first 2 issues, and then 3 months later, I'd read, say, the next 3 issues, and then it would be another 3 months before I read, issue 4 and 5 of the book. So I was really not really I didn't go back and reread, because I'm well, I just read this. I don't really need to go back. But it didn't really. There wasn't a lot of things clicking by the end, and I was very confused. But the second time, I read it all in one go.
Mm-hmm.
I took 2.5 hours, read all 10 issues, and I was okay, this makes way more sense to me than.
Yes. And I could definitely see that. Because initially when I picked it up, I didn't read anything about it. I didn't realize that there were essentially 2 different books that are companions to each other.
Right.
And I just thought they were all, exactly together. And when I noticed it initially, or when it clicked for me, it was when things were repeated in the Six Fingers that we saw from The One Hand. And I said to myself, oh, I'm dumb. This is a companion book from the other perspective.
Yes. So the One Hand is in the perspective of our detective.
Yes.
And the Six Fingers is the perspective of our killer.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yes.
And I really like how they structured it. I guess on your end as the consumer, like one book comes out 2 weeks later, the companion comes out, and then issue 2 of the One Hand, and then issue 2 of the Six Fingers.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you that little bit of rest time to digest it, but then you're also able to pick up on a different side not too long after you've read it. So
Right.
I think it's super cool. I hope they do more stuff like that in the future. I don't know if anything else has been made like that, but I could just be out of the loop.
Right. Because I was also confused with purchasing the books, and obviously in release order, that's probably how you would read them. But if I was just sitting there and I only had a couple issues each, I thought, well, should I start with the Six Fingers or the One Hand?
Right.
Does it matter? Does it matter if I read his perspective first over, because they overlap, but towards they how the book goes, it's like a far overlap, and then by issue 5, that's like within
seconds of each other.
Yeah. So I didn't really know if there was a difference. But then the graphic novel, when they put it out, it's in the order that it's supposed to be in. So I think that's a definitive way to read it, is just all in one shot rather than issues. Like the issues are cool because they all have different arts. Like that's that's the coolest part of collecting individual runs, is that you get all the arts. And now this is when this book came out, it was very popular. So this is the second printing, but I prefer the second printing because how cool the art is.
It is very, very cool.
And I don't know if you can see the little, so the book is about a killer who has basically a sixth print past his pinky finger.
Yeah.
A sixth fingerprint. So on the cover, you can see like his little nub at the back, like his little nub. It's
right
really,
next to the pinky. And I love... Okay, let's start chatting about it, because so Ari Nasser is the detective in The Other Hand, or sorry, The One Hand.
Yes,
and he has put away the killer twice. They're two different killers, but they have the exact same MO. For their strings of murders, and every single time they leave these very detailed paintings or these drawings on walls in blood.
It's almost like a scripture.
Right. It actually show the show me the cover, the yellow one that you had. Because those
you
blocks.
Want any? I'll show you this one, because this is basically more along the lines of what the messages look like.
Yeah. So they're these like little block.
So this is issue 1 of the Six Fingers.
Yeah, so all those little blocky things are drawn on the walls. That's perfect. Yeah, there's like, and they're all different, but they all have this. There's apparently some meaning to them, because every single murder scene has the exact same inscriptions on the walls. Mm-hmm. And Ari has meticulously went over those. He's memorized it. So anytime he walks into a crime scene and he sees it, he knows if anything is out of place. So he's dedicated his whole career, his whole life to finding and putting away these killers.
And he's about to retire.
And the book starts with him retiring, right? Mm-hmm. And when they get the call saying there's another murder and he needs to go to the scene, and he gets there, and one of the first thing he notices is that extra finger.
Yeah.
Or that little splotch next to the pinky. And he realizes everything that the killer does is intentional. So this isn't a mistake. We're looking for something different on this killer's hand. And that, to me, that was like, it drew me in right away.
Yeah. For sure.
I thought it was so cool. I'm like, how are we going to find this person? It's just who knows? I guess a finger. Mm-hmm. How many people walk around?
He also can't believe that it's happening again.
Again for the third time. Yeah. How is that possible? And how are they done exactly the same?
Because Martin Tillman was the first killer.
Yes.
And he was put in prison, but he passed away in prison. Mm-hmm. And then the second killer was just considered a copycat. And Odell Watts is that killer, but he's still alive in prison. Yes. He comes into play mid-book, and it's crazy.
It is. So, do you want to introduce Johannes now?
Sure, but should we point out that Ari is kind of struggling with his own well-being, and he has to go to like what you would call like a sex house, and he's speaking to. So in this world, we think there are humans, and then there are cogs, which are androids.
Mm-hmm. So
it's like a mix of
It's like Blade Runner / Westworld / Terminator. Yeah.
So he has to go talk to Nemone.
Yes.
Which is like his.
It's his Lady of the Night, who is a cog, like a human machine hybrid kind of thing.
But he uses her as like a real relationship. Like he talks to her about things because it's like he feels he's basically alone.
Right.
So this is all he has.
Yeah, this is the only human-like connection aside from the people that he deals with at these crime scenes.
Mm-hmm. And our killer, he is in issue 1. We find out he's just like a grad student for archaeology, and he's delivering his thesis to, like, he's trying to get a grant.
Yes,
and he's delivering his work, and they're like, "Okay, it's time for you to go up." And he thinks he spent all night crafting his pages and his thesis and his notes, and he's going through and there's nothing.
Yeah.
And he's very confused over why there's no notes. And he's just this young kid who works at a chemical plant, like a chemical dump plant, and he doesn't understand. He swore he was up all night preparing for this, and then there was nothing.
Oh, the whole scene of him going into the chemical waste.
Yeah.
To I think he had to like unclog something.
Yeah, because everything was flooded.
Yeah. So he just like sifts through it all. He's in a hazmat suit or whatever, but everybody's warning him, don't do that. Just give it a second. The cleaners will come. And he's just impulsive. He's impatient and takes it into his own hands. But then we see this doesn't give it away, because I think this is just important to the story to kind of build up that suspense. But he starts.
Well, we know this comic is in the perspective of our killer, so we know what's happening. But let me tell you something.
Yeah.
When I first read it, all spread out, I don't know why I felt disappointed.
Why?
That it was like a mutation caused in it's like a DC plot.
Oh.
Caused, like, you know how the Joker falls into the pit of acid?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just thought it would have been like he was born that way.
Oh, I see.
I thought that's what I was going into, but then I had to just realize that it's just he's mutating.
Yes.
But then the second time I read it, it made way more sense by the end, because I wasn't just all confused.
Yes, because in the end, it's not because of the mutation.
Yes.
It is only the part that gives him away.
Yeah. but I was just like, what?
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, wait a minute. This is why? This is why he's doing it? It doesn't. Yeah. It's kind of silly, but it's not like that.
No. Yeah. This isn't a Joker plot. This isn't like how every single Marvel character gets powers.
Thank goodness.
Because he doesn't have powers. It's just, I don't know. I was just a bit, this is why he has this little nub.
Yep.
But whatever. It's fine once you read it as a whole. It makes way more sense.
It does.
But yeah. And then after his job, he has a girlfriend, and he goes to meet her at this art show that's in town. And Ada is like the artist we come to know in this world. But they end up breaking up, him and his girlfriend, at this art show. Mm-hmm. But he realizes, so Ada creates this piece out of like bloody hands. Mm-hmm. And that also didn't click to me at all the first time I read it, like going through. And he gets like a flashback of like something that happened that he doesn't remember.
Yes.
And this is when he realizes he never made any notes.
Right.
Which is crazy.
So I guess we should say Ada, and I forget his girlfriend's name, but they are not the same person. Ada is like the resident artist who is putting on this show.
Yeah. And I didn't really write her name down because she lasts like all of a page.
Yeah. But I think her kind of spiel to Johannes was really important. She had said, essentially, you always seem to, or you always make sure that you have your life in order to everybody else's detriment. So he puts everybody else aside so that his life is in control, or it seems to be in control.
Right.
And that plays into the idea of him being the killer. Maybe he
'Cause
isn't in control and he can't remember this whole span of
Right.
time where he was putting his thesis together. What was he doing? Who's
Right.
controlling him? Why does he not have this part of his life under wraps?
Because he even made it about himself when they were arguing.
Exactly.
Like she was bringing up points about their relationship, and he just was like, "Yeah, but me."
Right. He'll rationalize everything based on his life and not take into account anybody else's, thus resulting in the breakup. So finally, something out of his control that he sees personally,
Yes.
and then more of it comes later.
And we should point out at the end of every issue, they cross paths.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, it's real cool. So in like the one hand with Ari, we see him pass the killer, but we don't know it yet because we haven't read issue 1 of the Six Fingers. But in the
Right.
end of issue 1 of the Six Fingers, they cross paths.
Yep. He
You know,
runs
because-
out
yes.
of the art gallery, I think, and
Yes.
he bumps into him. Yeah.
Because in issue 2 of the one hand, he goes, Ari, the detective, he does a bunch of stuff. He gets served to go to court because Odell, he wants out
Yes.
because obviously there's a new killer. So he thinks, well, obviously this wasn't me. So why am I in jail? And then he tries to go find Nimone.
Yep.
And then she's not there. So he goes to the Gap, which is where they keep all the androids and like kind of fix them up.
Yes.
And then he sees a flyer for the art show, and that's how he ends up there.
Yes.
And so we don't get their paths crossed till issue 2 for them, but we get it in book 1 of the Six Fingers. So
yeah.
like the separation of timelines is way farther apart at the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when he's at the art show, everything kind of like falls apart in his mind.
Yeah.
Because when Ari walks in and he sees the statues, the statue of all the bloody hands, and he's losing his mind, and all he can see is these symbols that haunt him for the last 30 years of his career.
Yep.
And then a bunch of people are yelling at him because like he's plastered on as the detective who didn't find him, and because now people know that it's out.
Yes.
So a bunch of people are heckling him, and all he can see is the symbols and hear the voices, and then he gets bumped, and then he notices the killer.
Yeah.
He notices the hand, and so then he follows him out, but then he's gone.
Right.
Yeah, crazy.
Oh, it's so good. It's a lot of suspense for still images.
Yes.
And I will say, I think we need to give some appreciation to the art in this book.
The art is so good.
It's very good. It's very rough. It's very like sketchy. It's very dark, but everything is conveyed so well.
Yeah.
There's so
Colors
much
are
motion.
picked perfectly.
Exactly. I think everything is very, very intentional.
Yeah. Now in issue 2 of the Six Fingers, if I may, the first page has a killer quote that I'd like to read. So
Let's hear it.
we're setting the tone. We're at another murder.
Yes.
Like he's at another, they're at a corner of a lot, and there's people outside, photographers, reporters, and they clean the blood off the walls. But I saw pictures in the post. It was the same before as all those random symbols. These two ladies are talking outside. You know, they're just, the gossip is happening.
Yeah.
You know, the people are understanding that this is happening. The murders are back. So we get to a point where we see a shadowy figure walking through the crowd. And it's quoted, it seems random, of course, the motion on the tape, and they're referring to the caution tape because the police have it all quarantined. The way it dances, flickers, and pirouettes, but it only seems random because we can't see the wind. It only seems random because we don't have the data to see the invisible guiding hand that's moving it. And then the next page is a full art like introductory to the comic, and it says, "And there's always a hand." And it's so sick.
It's so good.
And it's our killer hooded up, holding the tape, like because he's the one
Yep.
orchestrating this entire thing.
Yep.
And I love that quote.
That
It's so
is
good
so cool.
because it goes into everything. Like we get an image in issue 1 of the One Hand of Ari's watch.
Mm-hmm.
And time is very important in this whole entire thing. You see a bunch of clocks everywhere, and they even get into clocks with like him dreaming and stuff.
Yes.
And if you don't see, there's another quote where in the heart of a bad dream, look for a clock. Clocks and dreams can't tell time.
That's right. So that is what Johannes's dad used to tell him when he would get like night terrors or he'd have nightmares. He said, always focus on a clock in your dream. Clocks and dreams can't tell time. So if you see that clock and it's not telling you the time right, you know it's a dream, and that'll help you relax. But his dad died.
Yes.
Right? And that was also kind of a nagging thought in his head. He said, ever since then, I haven't had that same sort of feeling of safety or security, right?
You would say he was around like 10 when his father passed, right? And he's been growing up around, he was a child.
Yeah,
he was a young kid.
Yes.
But this is when obviously he wakes up. We see the past through his like dreams.
Yeah.
And he wakes up and then he starts seeing things in his own apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to meet Ada again, the artist, and she sees his mutation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when they kind of form a relationship and sees his medication. And she's like, well, what are you even taking? Like, how do you even know if that's even what you need, kind of thing.
Right.
But then when he's in his apartment and he's seeing flashes on all of his walls and like the next murder, all of a sudden like he teleports and disappears and ends up on a highway.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, what is going on here? When he's on the highway, we see a major crash. And then from Ari's perspective, he's obviously sees it on the news, and then you see the massive pillow of fire that's in the distance, and it's super cool.
Yep.
But then obviously the second issue, we're back at the gallery. So like we're ahead of time in the Six Fingers, and then we're back in the One Hand.
Yep.
Back at the gallery, crossing paths again. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah. That whole scene of him flashing to the highway, it threw me for a loop. I thought, what the heck is actually going on? How does this even make sense? But I think we are supposed to be left in the dark, just like him, just like everybody else.
Yeah, because he basically like teleports through a wall. Like you see him running across, and then all of a sudden he falls out of a door, and then he's just on the highway, and then it dodges a car.
Well, I saw that, and I thought, what does this mean stylistically? Mm-hmm. It isn't. It actually is happening.
Yeah, it's happening. But this is when he gets almost hit by the car. We see another backstory flash of his childhood, and this is when we get introduced to the Arrowhead.
Oh, that's right.
His father's chilling, head down in the kitchen, and he walks up to his dad and he sees, he gives him the arrowhead, and this is when we get the story of like the clock.
Yes.
And he looked for the clock on the wall because he doesn't want it to be a dream. He wants it to be real because he wants his father back.
Right.
Yeah. And then obviously we go back to the highway and everything's in flames. And he's just like, he doesn't know what's going on. And then he goes over to the guy who's clearly passed away in this car crash, and he looks on his wrist.
Yep.
And because he has a watch, and he's making sure that he doesn't care about the guy at all.
No, he just wants to see if
he just wants to see if he's alive.
Yeah.
And then he just starts to question if he's even real, if he's awake. Is this all a dream? Mm-hmm. And then we go back to, the art studio, and that's when they cross paths again, and Ada's starting to put it all together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot about the arrowhead part.
That'll comes into play in the last issue, and I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have the answers to them.
I will do my best. I think I might.
Yeah. Or if anyone else has answers, let us know. Because
maybe
there's a lot of
I think it would be
think about.
Very good if people have read this and they want to chime in with either their interpretation, or if maybe we're just dumb and we just don't get it.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Because it is a lot to take in. A lot of different parts coming together.
Yeah, and I think I think even a 2 or 3 times over read would probably do everybody really well, which sometimes I would feel like that means that they didn't do a good job of conveying the information. But this time, since it is so short, it's only 10 issues, right?
Yeah, it takes literally like 2.5 hours to read.
Right. I think that's the joy of rereading it. You don't have this 300 or 1,000 page slog to get through and still
Right.
not understand it. This is 10 issues. You can do it. And then in 2 weeks or whatever, even in a month, you can reread it, pick up on things you missed last time, and have a completely different experience enjoying it.
That's what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when I finished it the first time, I said, wow, I need
What?
to read this again because I don't know what's going on.
And it's at least captivating enough, and it looks good enough for us to want to do that.
Yeah, it's so well written too.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Well, like the quote that you said about the wind.
Yeah, it's so sick.
Looking back on that, you realize its connection to the cogs,
Right.
their programming, all of that kind of stuff.
hmm
Ugh, beautiful.
And Ram V, I've collected a bunch of his other books since reading this.
Yeah.
But in obviously trade paperback form because it's a lot easier to read.
Yes.
Like These Savage Shores, that's also another good one. The Many Deaths of Lila Starr, another great one. And then the new one that came out the end of December, and finally a book. It's all last year, but The Dawn Runner. I haven't finished this yet. I just got it.
Oh yeah, that cover
But
looks so
it
cool.
looks so cool. It looks so cool. So I'm gonna hop into that obviously soon. But the other two were amazing books. But
Nice.
yeah, he's such a good writer.
hmm
And then it's so crazy that they so Ram V wrote The One Hand, and then Dan Waters wrote The Six Fingers, and so they're like two separate writers writing different books, but writing them at the same time.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
They're so cohesive.
because you can see on every issue who the artists are and who wrote it, like at the top. And Ram
Right.
V is only on one, and Dan Waters is on the other. But the rest of them, you have the last, 3 artists and graphic
Yeah.
writers that are a part of it. But yeah,
Pencil, inkers,
Yeah.
colors.
so it's just cool to see two separate
Yeah.
minds come together to make a book.
I didn't realize that they wrote them like that.
Mhm.
I thought
Yeah.
they wrote them together. I mean, they had, obviously. It feels very cohesive. I think they did an excellent job of splitting up the duties. Wow, that's very
Yeah.
cool.
hmm
Jeez.
And you think it's crazy with the 4 issues you've already read, issue 1 and 2 of each.
Yeah.
Issue 3 kicks off insanity.
How does this one start? I forget.
So Ari, of The One Hand, he goes to visit Odell in prison. He watches him get killed. Like he watches him get shivved in prison after he
Yes.
has this whole conversation with him, and he wants knowledge and he wants to know, who this killer is, because he's just haunted by his past, and he doesn't. But Odell knows, right?
Right.
They're all in cahoots, because obviously we find out later what's actually happening,
Yes.
and he's realizing things, and he watches him get pulled away after their little one-on-one conversation, and then and we're like, okay, what? Full on like murder happening in the
Yeah.
prison.
Uh-huh.
And then he tries to go find Nimone again
Mhm.
in the factory. And then he meets Helene.
Helene, yes.
Helene, yeah.
So this is Nimone,
Yes.
but her memory, since she's a cog, has been wiped and replaced with the story of Helene. And Helene has been at this factory for a long time, trying to make ends meet, just working day after day after day. And she wants to get out, but she doesn't know how.
hmm Have you seen Severance?
No, not yet.
Okay, so it's basically like the cogs. They have two separate lives. So it's like the innies and the outies of Severance, where on the outie, they're a whole different life. And when they go to work, they're a separate mind, and they don't even know
Right.
what they do on the outside. So it's kind of like that in a way, where she no longer has the memories of Nimone.
Exactly. Or if people know Blade Runner, it is the replicants who have a story implanted in their heads, and they've lived this life, and this is who they are. They have all these memories of their entire existence, even though none of it's real.
I haven't actually seen the first Blade Runner.
You haven't?
I saw 2049 and I was like, okay, this is great. Because obviously Denis Villeneuve directed it, so I had to watch it.
It's beautiful.
But I went and got the next one or the original to watch
yes.
later. But yeah.
It's so good. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, it's essentially now he's chatting with Helene, trying to get to know her, trying to see if she can remember anything. Trying to jog her memory or her old memories, but it doesn't work.
And that's when he leaves.
Yep.
And then he gets a call that Odell is alive.
That's right. He's in the hospital.
He's in the hospital.
Yes.
So he goes to the hospital and then he finds him murdered.
Absolutely butchered.
So we didn't mention it before, but the killings are very brutal.
Oh yeah. They are.
We don't see a lot of it happen, but we see the aftermath, and the bodies are like
they're
chopped to
disfigured.
pieces.
They're chopped. Yeah. Yes.
They're set up in a way where like the head is sitting on the belly and the legs are like, because he's using all that blood to make the paintings.
Right. So he
the
like
symbols on the wall
needs to take them apart.
Oh. Yeah, they're not just lying on the ground. They don't look good at all.
No, there's no tape silhouette of the body because they're all in pieces.
Yes. And when he walks into that room and sees it, he realizes the blood on the wall is still wet.
Yeah.
And this is when we start to cross paths at a closer timeline. Mm-hmm. And he thinks to himself, he's still here.
Yep.
The killer is still here. And then he hears something on the other side of the wall. And that's when the issue ends.
It's so wild.
Yeah, he's like, so you're in the room. He thinks he's like, you're in the room.
Where
are you at?
Yep.
And then he hears a knock on the other side of the wall. And it's crazy. So cool.
Oh. And he thinks he's going crazy.
Yeah.
Because how do you hear a knock on the other side of the wall?
Yeah. Obviously, he thinks there's like another room.
Yeah.
Right? He like a closet on the other, like if he were to leave and go around. But there's
Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then we obviously cut back in time a little bit.
Yep.
In the Six Fingers with our killer. And Ada is tracking him down now.
Mm-hmm.
She's following around and seeing him do supernatural things like disappearing.
Yes.
And she basically tracks him down and follows him to the hospital. And I like this quote when they're together. He says, the right hand cannot know what the left hand is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as a reader, you don't really know what's happening yet. But that quote makes so much sense once they have an actual conversation with each other.
Yes.
But yeah, she's in the wall with him.
Right. Because so he commits the murder of Odell, and then he hears other people coming, and they're stuck in this room, so they have to escape, and he can't leave her behind. So this is when it all kind of comes out. When we initially saw him falling through the wall in the first issue of the Six Fingers, or
issue
second
number 2.
Issue 2.
Number 2,
yeah. This is where we actually see the mechanic happening. So essentially the wall opens up and he can just walk through into a different dimension, I guess.
Yes.
It's all organic. It's all, I don't know if it's slimy, but it's mechanical and organic.
It's mechanical,
yeah. And
it's very Matrixy.
It is, yes. And then the wall shuts behind them, and they're standing in this hallway.
Mm-hmm. To continue that quote of with the right hand can't know what the left hand is doing, and it says, but you have both are across the wall close enough to clap, not knowing you're starting to understand to decipher.
Yeah.
And it's like he's this our killer is slowly realizing what's happening. He's deciphering the world, and we're getting hints of what is actually happening with him.
Yes.
And who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And he's starting to figure it out. Maybe in a little bit of denial about it, but still acknowledges that these things are happening.
Yep.
And he has to leave essentially Ari in the dark about it. He can't just give that information up.
No. And they actually have in this book, we see more of the ending of the third issue with Ari when he heard something on the other wall.
That's
so
right.
they actually have a conversation with each other.
Yes.
Before he disappears.
Yeah. So cool.
And this is when we obviously get the understanding and the deciphering, and then we get the symbols that we've been seeing all these issues. We start to get them in letters.
Yes.
So did you actually decipher them?
I did
when
not.
You were going through, you didn't?
I don't think I did. No.
Okay. The first time I couldn't really read it.
Okay.
You know, what's funny is this goes exactly with my second reading of me actually understanding.
Yeah.
Like this quote of not, you're starting to understand to decipher. Like I didn't know what was happening the first time I read it. The second time I actually was able to read and piece it together, like separate the words and actually make a sentence. So I actually wrote the whole thing down because I knew this would be important. So our killer, this is in obviously his mind. He's understanding what he's writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it must be finished to release us from the clasp of the other hand to escape. That was like the first little notch.
Yeah.
They keep talking after they die. We keep talking after we die. Your father's gift is the Rosetta Stone to show you the truth of the gaps and of the before. So that was that little paragraph that was deciphered for us that he's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's trying to think about, well, why do we keep talking? Like we're people, obviously. And then he starts to understand what his father was doing for him. And then so their conversation together was, are they cogs? Why are you killing them? Are they cogs? And then our killer says, I'm not the killer. And then Ari says, what are you? And he says, an archaeologist.
Yeah.
And so like he's bouncing back and forth between his personas.
Right. Yes. Yep.
This in issue 4, he's in the hospital, Ari, our detective, and he jumps out of the hospital. And at this point I put a question. I said, is Ari a cog?
Right.
Because like, how did he survive that fall? He jumped from like 15 stories high.
Mm-hmm. I know.
But yeah. And then he goes to meet Helene.
Yes. Well, and that I think that's a huge question for this trope, right? Mm-hmm. Even in Blade Runner, we don't know if our main characters are replicants. We don't know. They don't know if they are either. So same kind of thing. Ari has to figure out this case, but is also questioning himself as well because of everything that he's seeing.
And more obviously deciphered quotes. We have the unspoken language guiding our hand. And then, do you know what you are? Memories exist beyond our own lifetime, somehow coded with our consciousness. Which is like, what?
Yeah.
So obviously we're getting to a point where we're realizing he's not human.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what's happening is just being reprogrammed.
Exactly.
So Ari starts to map out the path of the killer with security cam failures.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes. And he finds out where his apartment is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, because he had noticed when he was investigating that there were these disruptions in tech like signals.
Because he calls his partner Mac up from the beginning.
Yes.
He's not really in the book a lot, but he's in that talking to him when he's retiring, and then he calls him up because he's not supposed to be on this case.
That's right.
Right? The police force have pretty much banned him because he's doing things, he's messing things up.
Yes.
And they just want him gone. Yeah. And so he calls Mac up and he's like, I need you to run these numbers, so I need to find him. Like, this is the last thing I need to do.
Right.
This is the only thing I need to do.
Yeah.
And he's set on it and he's obsessed with it and he just needs to figure it out.
So yeah, he retraces the killer's steps from the hospital back to his apartment. And then he goes to the apartment, right?
Yes, and he finds Ada there.
Ada's there. Yes. Well, okay, so what was that interaction again?
Well, at first he thinks she's the killer.
Oh, right. That's right. Yeah.
Because going back to the beginning, when he first went to the art show, after he left Nemone, he saw like a mugging in the alleyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid, he put up a bloody hand on the wall, and it had like, he thinks that was the killer. Then he found obviously the sheet to go to the art studio, and then when he gets there, he sees this massive statue of bloody hands. So he's piecing it together that he thinks she's the killer kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. But then obviously when he goes to the Gap to find out where Nimone is, he notices obviously there's a part of it where there's discarded pieces and parts. So obviously anybody can just go grab a bunch of these old hands and legs and parts of the cogs. Yep. But yeah. And then after this point, our killer, he goes to find Helene because he sees what Ari's doing. So he's going after someone he cares about.
So this is like one of those memory flashes. He gets information, and this is his next murder.
Yeah.
So because
she tells him where he was.
Yes.
Like he was going kind of thing. And then, we jump into issue 4 of the Six Fingers, and he goes to blow up his plant. Because he's fully in tune with what he is.
That's
right. So when he gets in, he recodes everybody. Because there's a bunch of cogs running security, and he recodes them.
Yes.
We obviously find out our killer is a cog.
Yes. Right, and then we have that view from his perspective, and it looks like all of the symbols.
Yeah.
So think like Neo in the first Matrix when he realizes his true power, and he sees all of the binary green and black code.
Yeah.
And that's how he sees the world. Oh, you're pulling it up. Perfect.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I thought, oh man, what a good Matrix homage.
Yeah. Because it's funny that he's in there and we see all these people coming through, and then he just puts them to a stop, and then that's when we get the title, like Six Fingers Part 4 Override. Like, we get the intro card, and then he basically just walks out because we don't actually know that he's the one who stopped them yet.
Right.
But then he leaves, and obviously he just walks away and the whole plant's destroyed. But he leaves like through the walls like he's been doing.
Yes.
But yeah, and then he runs back into, this is when he goes back to his apartment and Ada's there.
Yep.
And they have a whole discussion and, the whole nine. And then he has like an awakening and has another dream of his father. And he has he wakes up and looks at the arrowhead, and then he leaves. And then obviously she's there to be by herself, and he's off to go find Helene. He does find her though.
Yes.
He makes it to her house, and then obviously she talks to him, and then like he realizes they're one and the same, and he doesn't kill her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She makes him kind of rethink what he's doing, or even question why he's being compelled to do this.
Yeah, because she looks at him after he like has her in a hold, like up against the wall, and she says, "Do you even know what you are?"
Right.
Yeah, and he's just like, "Excuse me," and then he ends up the next page. We see him sitting in like his Matrix-y in between world, and he's sitting there looking at the arrowhead, obviously thinking about what he is, and that's when we get Ari going to see Ada in the next issue, and this is when it gets off the rails. And this is where I want to discuss with you that I don't know if in your book is the Six Fingers the last issue in the perspective of the killer.
I think so.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's satisfying that way. I think the final book of The One Hand is more satisfying.
Okay.
It's almost like, I think the ending of the book, our detective kind of figures it out, and he sees all this kind of happening, and the killer gets brought in.
Yes.
And his father walks in.
Yeah.
And that's when kind of things hit the fan. He doesn't know what's going on. He's like, "Where have you been?" And then obviously our detective, like we get more of it in the final issue of the Six Fingers, but our detective walks in after our main character has killed his father.
Yes.
And that's when they start piecing it together and he realizes what's happening. And then Ari ends up at this airport,
Yes.
and with all like these planes that haven't gone anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets on the plane and there's thousands of people just
Yeah.
like plugged in.
Yeah.
Basically like the Matrix. They're sitting in front of the screen and they're like locked in.
Yep.
And he realizes none of this is real.
Right.
And he realizes that he is only alive to serve one purpose, and that purpose is just being a detective and hunting this killer. Like the killers are made and reproduced to serve his purpose.
Exactly. Just like how Helene's life story was working in a factory, and how Nemone was, in a brothel, and that's their lives. That's all they do, and they have this story built into their brains that they serve. This is their life. You're exactly right. These cogs serve one purpose, and they're going to do it in perpetuity, and that's it.
Yeah. And I was like, because after Ari, he wants to kill our killer, but then he doesn't. And he leaves, and he like falls through this door, like he's in another, and he ends up in this airport. Like he travels himself.
Right.
He teleports and he ends up at the airport, and then he walks in. It's a crazy image, like him walking in and seeing all these people like hung up,
plugged in, and
they're all like,
oh, and that stewardess right there.
Yeah,
she was in the book earlier, or she was in the story earlier. I can't remember where she was. I don't know if she got attacked.
You think she was in the hospital?
Maybe in the hospital.
But yeah, then he pieces out after he sees.
Yeah.
And then he just, hurls on the outside because he's like finally realizing what's happening.
Yes.
And then none of it is real. And then he has like this kind of vision. I don't know if it's a vision, but like he walks through the mist of the airport.
Yes.
And he like throws everything away. And then he says, I thought of Helene, who I truly loved. At least that's what I knew was real. And then he says it was real. And then he sees these two figures kind of walk out in like these hazmat suits.
Yeah.
After he reaches like this almost lighthouse looking thing.
Yes.
And then it kind of jumps across. And then he ends up talking to a man called the Keeper. And he kind of, he learns everything.
Yeah.
And then it ends. This is where I was confused. It ends on like this image of like the arrowhead, but like, what is it trying to tell us?
You know what that is? That's that weighted duck. Remember the duck on his desk in the first book?
No, I didn't look that deep into the first.
So those.
Did they actually make a shot of it?
Yeah. So those ducks that like they dip down and they grab a little bit of water, and then as soon as they get heavy, they tip over and then they go back up. And do it again.
Yeah.
So, wow! It just kind of hit me. So the purpose of that is essentially there is no purpose. All it does is fill up with water, tips back down, empties, and does it over and over and over again. Just like
it's
just like him. He's just like him.
He fills up with his
mission.
Cases.
Then he
obsessed, and then he finishes it, and then it restarts. Wow!
Just got it. Yeah.
Because I didn't know what this was. Like, I didn't pay attention that deep on his desk.
Yeah.
Because and then you notice at the bottom, it has one of the symbols, but it's like his cog is split up. It's like his reset.
Exactly. Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you showed me that because I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is the cycle restarting again. And my interpretation of him going into the fog, meeting those two people in the suits, is them essentially collecting him, wiping his memory, and resetting him.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but not
Like the
before.
fog is his brain, like it's empty, right? And
Yeah,
then it's resetting, obviously.
essentially not before him
Talking with the
getting,
keeper.
yeah, essentially learning everything, and
Yeah,
then bye bye, it's all gone.
yeah. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
seeing all
cool.
those people kind of locked up,
Oh, it was
that was wild.
very eerie.
But then, see, here's the thing. That feels like the ending.
Yes.
Then we have to read another issue. So we're going back in time again to witness our killer
Yep.
discussing with his dad. We get the whole scene played out, and then he's using his blood to write the symbols. And then we see Ari come in, and he actually shoots him.
Yes.
And so he kills that cog, which is obviously then it resets again because this cog has to perish in order for the cycle to continue.
Exactly.
Right. And then they have a discussion. You know, they found a way to talk to each other, a means of escape they didn't anticipate, our own language. It's like the cogs realized how to break the cycle.
Right.
And how to because it goes back to the comment about when they die, they keep talking, and when we die, we keep talking.
Right.
So they're trying to, like an iRobot kind of situation where they're forming a higher intelligence and trying to beat out this system.
Exactly.
But then we get the end of the book, okay, I think it's kind of clicking. Obviously, what I just mentioned, our killer goes down, Johannes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a vision. We get this shot of the city and the staircase of all these people walking around and forming their own thing. And then we get a shot of Helene on top of a building, and they all just start committing suicide.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They're jumping off the tops of buildings and just like falling to their death.
Yeah.
What do you think that means?
So I don't know if that is... You're right. I forgot about that. That part to me, I don't 100% know. And it's looking back.
Okay. So at the end of this book, you see the duck on the desk.
Yes. Yes.
But it's covered in blood. But yeah, I didn't understand what that was.
I think
in general. But yeah, then all these people start falling off, and then we get this image of somebody coming to pick up our killer through the portals, like through the walls. And then all these cogs just start dying.
Right. I think it might be some sort of like reset.
Yeah.
So
why would they all need a reset at the same time is what I'm...
Because...
Are they forming like a greater version of themselves? Like they're killing the old ones because they've figured it out, and they're like trying to basically like a Planet of the Apes situation where they're trying to overrule the humans.
Right.
Because Ari is actually a human.
Right.
Like all the other humans on the planes that are just in this Ready Player One.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know the real world
simulation thing.
But these cogs are trying to figure out how to escape their cycle.
Right.
And they're slowly talking to each other.
Okay, that's a little more uplifting than how I interpreted it, which is like, okay. There's like so your interpretation is essentially they have gained this higher level of understanding, and they're going to escape from this cycle.
Right.
My interpretation of it was whatever's controlling them, the highest, like the keeper or whatever, is saying, oh, it's gone too far. And they're becoming way too independent. Let's do a big reset, and let's incapacitate the vast majority of them so that we can collect them, reprogram them, and set it all up again.
I think you might be right.
Which is really scary and really crappy, but
because when that figure walks through, he picks up his arrowhead.
Yeah.
And then he just leaves. He leaves his body there. And then that's when we get the mass,
jumpies.
Yeah, they're all just this image is crazy. Of them just
walking.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yikes.
But yeah, I like Yeah, yours makes way more sense. But like, I think you could look at it both ways.
I think so, because it's very.
Yeah.
I think it's open ended, and I think it's
Yeah.
supposed to be,
hmm
and I think it's supposed to be done exactly like we're doing. We like
Yeah.
people read it together, and then people talk about it because it's supposed to be ambiguous, and you have to come up with what they may have tried to like allow us to interpret. Ugh, the book is so cool.
I'm so glad we talked about this because I knew what was happening, but now that we've just put it all together, it makes so much more sense.
Yes,
Having another viewpoint on it.
Yeah, the whole
Because
duck
looking
thing.
at it with the duck thing, I didn't understand at all. So thank you for clearing that up because that makes way more sense.
It just took me like 3 weeks to sit on it.
The whole like this massive figure walking through could go into my viewpoint of, okay, we've done what we wanted. They're communicating. They're understanding the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make superior cogs
Exactly.
to take over. Like the ones that are now aren't at their best. But it also, to your point, he's coming in to say, no, they're getting too good.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
they're becoming too aware.
Yes. And we gotta stop that.
Yes.
I think.
Wow, this was sick.
I know. I think the way I interpret it is definitely just more topical in today's climate. But I mean, it's been like that since 2000 when The Matrix came out. Like,
Yeah.
I think we've always had that fascination with technology is oversight too strong in our world, and how far can it go? I think that's
right.
And people have always tried to tell stories that push that boundary to make it less and less obvious to the viewer that there is no control for these characters. It's all controlled by something else.
Mm-hmm.
And we barely get to see it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So another thing I just noticed, I almost wish this book was just one final book. Like you did the first 4 issues and then it was the 6 fingers in the one hand final issue.
I was
like
thinking,
you get a bunch of like they're so close to each other within time frame. Like if you just kind of mix them together and kind of take a couple pages out.
Yeah.
Because then at the end of the one hand, when you see the duck doing this, you're like, okay, what? And then you have to go again and read basically almost everything again with a little more viewpoint.
Yep.
But the dark figure that walks through and takes the arrowhead, he walks over to the desk. Like you see the desk.
Yes.
With the thing on it.
Yep.
With the blood. And then he's the one who kickstarts it again.
He's the one who tips it.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
And then Ada's left with somebody. I don't know who that is.
Let's see.
That's not Ari. It's somebody. She sees somebody in amongst all the people. Oh, I think he's the one who saved her from the cog that fell from the sky.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I think the keeper or whoever, like who's in charge of said the Matrix, is the one who's keeping the cog moving, like the pedestal going back and forth. Yeah. Wow.
I kind of wish now that the last book was 1 page Ari, 1 page Johannes.
Yeah.
And then it just kept flipping until the very end when you just got to.
Yeah. I mean, I get why they obviously had to keep the format going, but like I think there would have been a way to, because his book, Ari's book, was so heavy at the end, and you're like, well, it ends on like him talking to like Morpheus.
Right.
You know, the whole like where you take the red or the blue pill.
Exactly. Oh man, when I started reading that, I'm like, what am I reading here? Why is the format so different?
Yeah.
I thought I was reading like something went wrong with the book because I was reading it digitally. I thought, is this wrong? And then I kept flipping through and I realized, oh no, this was a stylistic choice.
Because the keeper says, what if I told you a long time ago we achieved machine singularity? For years, things were great. Machines did all our work for us, and human beings were free to pursue higher callings.
Yeah.
Then decades after, a number of human beings began to commit suicide en masse, and for the longest time, the rest of us couldn't figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they were cogs.
Right, because we couldn't tell the
Right?
difference.
We couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
The answer was that some humans need their existential purpose.
Mm-hmm. Man's search for meaning.
Yeah.
That's so nuts.
Wow. He says, so we build this place, a place where others like you could fulfill their existential purpose, a place that validates your drive.
Oh my
And
God.
he just says it's a fucking zoo.
Dude, that's like the Truman Show,
Yeah.
where he's just in this world doing his job, and he's living. I mean, people aren't watching him. People aren't watching Ari, but
Yeah.
it's essentially
essentially they are watching him.
Yeah.
Because the detective says, what now? Now that I know, what do you do with me?
Yeah.
And he says, the keeper says, you go back. And then Ari says, how could I possibly go back to that? You've seen the airplanes. We can make you forget.
Yeah.
All that you do is play along for the others. Act like none of this happened. You caught the one-hand killer. You save the day. You'll go back to the hero's welcome. Then you'll retire. You'll do an exit interview with the NNPD, and we could do it then. And then the keeper says, why would you choose not to be happy? And then it's basically like it just restarting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God.
What a book.
It's essentially live with this information or forget it and be happy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Crazy.
Oh my
I'm so
God.
glad that I didn't write any notes for issue 5s because I just wanted to
just
walk through
hash it out.
Yeah.
That was so much. I think that was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
That's what's
what
cool
a
about
book.
like book talks.
Yeah.
It's kind of like English class in grade 11. We had to read The Great Gatsby, and we kind of sat in groups of 4, and the teacher would come around. And she'd be like, all right, what do you think about this? And then our minds would start opening up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't do a lot of reading, but when we did stuff like that, like my mind would like continue to expand the thoughts that would be happening while we were reading. And this purpose, because like I'm good at understanding some things, but the minute details of this, and then having to read an issue after the ending and trying to piece it all together with not fully understanding, I need someone else's back and forth to really
put
home the thoughts.
When I read those last 2 issues, I thought we gotta talk about that, because I was on the fence. I was like, I really don't know what most of this means, but just saying it out loud makes it so much clearer.
And that there could be 2 different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Even though I think yours is the exact one. But like I didn't put that together.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I was just overwhelmed, I think.
I think so.
With all the information. Because it's so short, right? 5 issues each. And you really only get the last 2 issues where things start coming together.
Yes.
And then bam, it's over. And then you're trying to like work back the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And piece the little bits we get and then understand that it's not even, it's just a system.
Yeah.
You know,
man.
And these cogs are trying to figure it out and escape.
Mm-hmm. The fact that this was 10 issues is mind blowing.
Yeah.
They got so much into it.
Yes.
And it's done. There's no part 2. There's no extra schmaltz on it. It's done. Yes. And this is what we're left with. I think it's perfect. It's such a good book.
Yeah.
It was so entertaining. It's confusing, but once you get to talk about it, or once you even read it again, as a whole, as like a fully contained story, it's amazing. It's so good. I need to go watch a happy something now, but that's a phenomenal book.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to most people for sure.
I'm glad we talked about it because I was into it. Like when I was picking up the first issues, I was like, I want to read. I like thrillers, a lot of thriller movies and thriller books. And Adri has a lot of like those kind of comics as well, the graphic novels, and she's really into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And another book we want to get into is The Fade Out. It's a murder mystery.
Yes.
So that's on our docket list. But I really wanted you to read this because I was excited about it, but I didn't understand it. And it allowed me to sit down and read it all together.
Yeah.
Whereas month to month basis, I don't know if that was the way to read this much information.
Right. I feel like I would have been very, very, I would have been more confused about it.
I was lost.
Yeah. No, that was very, very good. I appreciate that recommendation because I would have not heard about it. I don't have any sort of comics or graphic novel news come up for me, so
Hmm.
I don't hear about these things. But you're like, yeah, it's coming out on like New Year's Eve or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we gotta get this.
Yeah, because I only did it because I wanted you to be able to read it. So I was like, well, when does the graphic novel come out? I'm
Yeah,
not going to buy it because I own every single issue,
yeah,
but like that's the definitive way to read it. And then it said December 26th or something. I was like, well,
yeah.
this is perfect because then he can just get
The
the
did
the
the
digital version of it when it's
all
all put
collected.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's perfect. I think
Yeah.
that's the way to go. If anybody wants to read this, get the collected and have fun with it.
Because all last year I was just in this mode of wanting to try other things visually,
Yeah.
and because I grew up with Marvel and I love a lot of the graphic novels Marvel does and
Yep.
the IDW turtle stuff, but I
Hmm.
wanted to try to like read other things that wasn't my comfort zone.
Yes.
And then I went really looking for Adria's birthday to find some like murder mystery books
Hmm.
that I maybe I could get into. And then I was suggested this issue and I picked it up and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I really liked his writing and then I bought his other books. And there was another book called the Day Tripper. That one was also very good. It's
Oh,
a
nice.
French author.
Oh,
It's in
cool.
French, but he also released it in English. But that one's really cool too. But so I read like four other graphic novels that weren't in my comfort zone at all, and I thought that was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And I feel you're right. When we were younger, like when we were in university, I would read and I would pick up single issues of
yeah,
Marvel and DC. And I thought, oh, you know what? Some of these are really cool. But I just get very tired of them because they
hmm
don't end. They just continue on. And then
they're
eventually
forever
there's
long.
some big event that resets the universe and then you do it again. And
Yeah,
in my opinion, I don't want that. I know
you
it's
got
for,
to find the mini five to
yeah,
10 issue books.
yeah.
You know,
Like one of my favorite books is Witches. This came out probably 15, 12 years ago. And it's this horror, I guess, just straight up horror book about witches in a forest and people running away from them. It's amazing. It's terrifying. Jock did the art. It's absolutely unbelievable. I wish they did a second one, but I'm okay with it being a
yeah.
single
Sometimes
book.
Warners are all you need.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like I said, I like the detective stuff. I like Batman Long Halloween. I like Hush. I like
Hush is great.
they're
Yeah,
contained, right? You
yeah,
know who the characters are, so you can get right into it. But then it's done. You don't have to worry about a follow up. You don't have to worry about what happens to the main character afterwards. They're one and done. And for me, I think that's the most digestible thing. Because yeah, I don't want to keep buying single issues for the rest of time.
hmm
To think, oh, my
I like
collection isn't complete.
a 30 to 50 issue run of like a set story. I think is good for
Yeah,
like expanded. Like to me, like there's so many IDW Turtles out there. They've
yeah,
just reset it, but there was like 150 issues. I stopped at like 75, but
right.
I think it peaked at issue 50. That was the cap of that first set story, and it was perfect.
Yep.
After that, it's like a whole new story kind of thing. But even Ultimate Spider-Man, there was like 156 issues,
Hmm.
but I think there was like 40 of those issues yet you could have just avoided in general.
Right.
You know, gone to the I when I finished reading it, I read it all in kind of like a couple weeks, and I told Adrian, I was like, there was a point on issue 127
Uh-huh.
where they did something, and then they had these other 20 issues where they like jumped ahead in time, and then there was like a 4 issue ending.
Hmm.
They could have just had that on the end of 127 and it would have been a perfect run
Yeah.
because these 20 issues I didn't like whatsoever.
Oh,
They could have just
jeez.
tacked it was a perfect book, like all 130 issues. If you were to just take that, and I told her, I said, if I were to read this again, I'm skipping all these books and I'm just jumping from this book right here, this where you could cut off these final 2 issues and jump to when he passes away.
Yeah.
Boom,
That's
done,
a that's a lot of
perfect.
that's a lot of issues to cut.
Yeah,
But but you're right. It's almost filler that
it's
we
unnecessary.
yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that.
So yeah, these books I think is a good way.
Oh yeah.
You know, you get these they're not thick, you know. They're
No.
maybe 200 and some pages of a graphic novel. There's 10 issues, 12 issues or something. The art's amazing.
Yep.
This one's a little bit thicker, but I think that's just because in the hard book copies, they tend to put all the art at the back
That's right.
of all the issue covers,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. It's a nice way to collect.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like these simple stories were cool. I think you would like this one, The Savage Shores.
I'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah,
that
one's
looks
cool. It's very vampire-y, pirate-esque.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. It's good stuff. This was fun.
It was. I liked it. We'll do another one. Probably not as complicated, but we'll still be able to.
Yeah. We're gonna keep it to under like 12 and under issues, because sometimes when you get too long into it, like a TV show, you got to make notes and notes. Like obviously I have to make a lot of notes, but if we were to go for 30 to 50 issues, it might take us our schedules forever to read.
Exactly.
But this was a quick nighter.
It seriously was. Yeah, I read it in like two evenings, or like one evening and the next morning. I thought, wow, I didn't want to put that down.
I didn't. I read it because I thought, let me just read 4 issues tonight, and then I'll just finish the rest tomorrow. No. And I was like, no, I'm in. I'm like, where do I stop? I have them all sitting next to me. Let me just plow through. I started at 7:00. I was done by 9:30.
Exactly.
I said, wow. And I was making notes as it probably would have taken people less time, because I was writing notes as per page, like to keep my thoughts in order once the book was done.
Exactly.
But yeah, this was awesome.
Yep, I agree.
So I want to thank everybody for listening. Let us know if you read The Six Fingers in the One Hand, and what you thought about it, and how your interpretation of the ending is. If it's kind of like ours, if it's a mutual thought process for everybody, if that's what they all think, let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
this was pretty fun.
Yeah, and let us know if there are any other books similar to this that would be good for us to check out.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been 2 Hours on a Sunday. I'm Brian.
And I'm Nick.
And we'll catch you guys later.